Let me get your reaction first to the news that the U.S. successfully targeted and killed bin Laden's successor, Ayman al-Zawahiri.
Well, this is huge. It's a moral victory, of course. Zawahiri has been a target of the United States for decades. It is an actual victory in terms of making America safer. He was the leader of Al-Qaeda, as we know, since Osama bin Laden. And while Al-Qaeda's been a little quieter lately, they certainly have not given up on their goals of attacking us. This is a big win. I congratulate the president for making the call and for the intel and military communities for executing this. I know some of the details I can't say, and it was seemingly fairly complicated, but yeah, good work to everybody.
You had heard about this over the weekend, is that right?
I had a source that informed me of this a number of hours ago, and I was impressed it stayed quiet.
Yeah, it's amazing how a major development like that does remain quiet. As I pointed out, Congressman, you served in Afghanistan. What are the challenges of conducting a strike like this? And we're told it was a drone strike after the U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan nearly a year or so ago.
Yeah, I mean, the challenge is massive. So first off, I think there's a lot of questions. Maybe the military knows more about this, but did the Taliban know that he was there? That could lend, further credence to Taliban and Al-Qaeda cooperation. But it's very difficult. When you have troops and intel assets in place, obviously they have their sources. You can get very real-time information. When you don't have that, and we've certainly been hamstrung in our ability to be able to target these kinds of targets, then it makes it a lot more difficult. You don't get as much real-time information. How do you confirm something? If somebody tells you this person's here, how do you confirm that's them? Obviously, we can still do that in some cases, and today is a great day to celebrate that. But I also think it's a moment to really keep in mind somebody will replace al-Zawahiri, and how are we going to take them out eventually as well?
Well, how does the U.S. go about collecting intelligence on an al-Qaeda leader like Ayman al-Zawahiri without boots on the ground, whether in Afghanistan or Pakistan for that matter? How do you think the U.S. was able to carry out this mission?
Well, I mean, it could be any number of things, and I don't know the answer to what happened here, but what we do know, we have the ability to do. Obviously, there's sources that can give us information. There's electronic means. I would tend to think that he was fairly safe on the electronic side, as Osama bin Laden was, but he also may have been feeling a little arrogant because we were out of Afghanistan, and particularly if the Taliban gave him safe harbor, he probably had no reason to suspect he was a target. And even if they didn't, he probably still felt a little safer. So there's any number of things the intel community can do to find something out. And then obviously, when you don't have people on the ground, the difficulty is we may have some pretty good cameras and stuff, but you can't necessarily tell who somebody is from the sky. And so you have to have other ways to confirm that.
How much do you believe this strike actually degrades Al-Qaeda right now, Congressman? Because the big question is what sort of threat they pose right now beyond the borders of their safe haven, let's say in Afghanistan.
Well, I think it certainly is degrading in the short term. So if you imagine kind of a fighter on the ropes, this was a massive blow and knocked that fighter down. That's what happens when you lose your spiritual leader. We know that's what happened when Osama bin Laden died. We got a lot of intel from that, but it also was a gut punch to Al-Qaeda. But that doesn't mean they're done. There will be somebody to come and replace him. He may have already had a successor he was grooming, and their desire to kill us simply because of who we are has not changed. And look, let's just be honest, when we left Afghanistan, that did embolden them to believe that the United States could be beaten. We can't be beaten on the battlefield. Our will can be beaten. It was beaten in Afghanistan. But that said, today's a day to celebrate this moral and actual physical victory against Al-Qaeda.
Does this strike, Congressman, show that the United States isn't taking its eyes off the threat from Al-Qaeda, ISIS, and other terror groups in the region?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, even though our capacity is significantly degraded with whatever we have the ability to do, and I don't know all those details, I think they're still an enemy of the United States. We'll still go after them. Again, we're not going to be able to do these operations as intensely as we were, and we need to keep that in mind when we talk about the U.S. future and partnerships with Iraq, for instance, when we talk about what Iran is doing and we talk about Al-Qaeda or ISIS in Iraq, which still exists. We can keep these actions up here, there, around the world, but it is important to recognize that as great as technology is, technology cannot replace people on the ground that know things, that tell us things. And that's why it's important to both have those assets on the ground, but also to be able to follow through on our word. So when people tell us stuff, they know that we're not going to abandon them.
I assume, Congressman, the U.S. should be bracing now potentially for some sort of retaliation or revenge from Al-Qaeda.
Yeah, it's possible. I mean, Al-Qaeda does not have the reach at the moment that they had, of course, on 9/11. This is why us staying on the offense against Al-Qaeda. And so when you hear, some of these senators that say, bring all the boys home, people like Rand Paul or Josh Hawley that just wants to basically give up on the entire world, the reason that we've been safe is not because Al-Qaeda's changed their mind. It's because we fought them where they exist. And so if they have the capacity to strike back, they would. Certainly in the United States if they could, but they probably have more capability to strike back on our forces or our allied forces in those regions. This is why it is important, as much as we may get tired of talking about the war, or we may come up with tripe words like endless wars, it's important for us to stay on offense, because we're going to find a day where if we let our guard down, they will be back here in the United States. Their will and their desire and their beliefs have not changed.